In this episode, I'm going to be diving into why we're about to have the hardest job of our lives and what we can do to actually prepare for it. Of course, I don't have all the answers, but I have been thinking on this very deeply, and I'm sure that you have been too, as is the rest of the world. So my name is Misbah Hawk. In 2016, I launched a podcast out of my childhood bedroom that landed me my dream job in the Bay Area, coaching Fortune 1000 executives and professional athletes. I've also produced shows with over 1 million downloads, and now I write and talk about high agency thinking and skill acquisition on the Habit Chess podcast and newsletter, which, by the way, make sure to get signed up for that in the description below. So let's start with the obvious. AI is touching every single industry and job role that we can imagine. And based on the trajectory that it has been going and is going to continue to go, we are seeing a real threat to job security, right? So everybody from doctors to lawyers to, there's very few industries that are not impacted by what's going on right now and what will continue to go on. And so this begs the question, what are we going to do? What are we supposed to do? Everybody's got an opinion on this, but I'm going to share mine and you can take what you like and leave the rest. Now, let me acknowledge that there are two groups here, right? You've got people who are very excited about AI and what it's going to bring and the doors that it opens up. For high agency people like me and you, this is the golden era. This is just the dream, right? Like, we can't believe we are living through this time as history is being written. But then there is also the other side of it, which, hey, if you are working a salary job and you aren't really doing anything of your own yet, and you are maybe beholden to the Googles and the HubSpots and the Salesforces and the big corporations of the world. And then there's the other group, right? Which is not to say they're not high agency thinkers, but rightfully they are scared of what is going to happen. Even people like me and you who are high agency thinkers, there is 10%, 20% of fear around where could this go? What might happen, right? So I want to take some time to break down what we can learn from what has been going on so far and what we can safely predict for the future. So let's start with the fact that everything is becoming easier to build. So if you are trying to build an app, for example, and you don't have any coding skills, that would be something like, I can speak to that. I had wanted to learn coding for years and I had started a bunch of Python courses and things like that, but never really stuck to it. And part of that is because learning coding for the sake of coding was boring. But when I had an actual project or an app idea that I was like, man, I wish this existed. I don't know why it doesn't exist yet. Maybe it would cost too much money to build. You would previously need at least 100 grand maybe, right? To get a software engineer to pay attention to you so you could build this thing. And then on top of that, you would also need this product market fit and a good market size in order for this venture for a lot of people to actually be worthwhile. So there are so many projects that would just get left behind because it didn't have the immediate revenue potential. It wasn't the thing that people wanted to spend $1 million, $2 million of venture-backed capital building. But there's an app called Replit, right? It got really big in the last year. It's funded by YC. You should look into the story of the founder. It's a very inspiring story. But I wanted to use the app to actually build this app idea that I had in mind. It had been on my mind for 6 years. It was essentially like a stopwatch where I could rename the laps because I was like, why can't you do that? I want to be able to rename the laps because I track my time a lot. I built Notion templates and things to be able to do that, but I want a simple stopwatch that can do this. So I remember hearing about Replit basically being something where you can talk to it like you would a human, right? Hey, I want to add this feature. I want to remove this thing. I want the color up here to look like that. And it took me back to when I was in like 11th grade in a basic coding class where every little thing you had to type out and communicate in code. If you wanted something to be bold, if you wanted there to be a line break, if you wanted the color to be just a little different, you wanted an animation, every little thing is communicated with lines and lines of code, right? And so what Replit has made available is you can talk to this thing It's an agent that is essentially coding for you. And it's actually one of the greatest examples of an agent that you're hearing about this everywhere, right? Like agents are going to be a part of our workforce. We're going to be managing teams of agents. It's not going to be uncommon to be hiring agents, right? But you think about, okay, how does that actually come into play? What are they going to do? And Replit is a wonderful example of something that an agent would be useful to do. Because let's say you have a child with autism, right? And you have been wanting to build something that helps you connect with the other parents who also have autism. And you're like, why won't these doctors, why won't people actually build this thing? Like, this would be so useful. It's so simple. It would allow us to get rid of this major little annoyance that nobody else is thinking about, but is really annoying to me as maybe the parent of somebody who has autism. And that project would maybe not get funded in the past, right? Or it might get murky with funding and the intention, who's building it, the vision for where it's going to go, the actual usefulness that it will have, how it started out, what will it turn into. But with something like Replit, where you can literally build an app in a few hours, or at least the first version of it in a few hours, that is something that now you don't need a software engineer and a VC and a bunch of people to be involved to actually make happen. You can be that parent of somebody who's on the spectrum and be like, I want to make this for my kid. And you literally sit there and you come up with it, right? That is crazy because that just was not possible before. And I did that with Replit. So the app is called Laplist. You can check it out in the description below, but it took me probably 3-4 hours on a Saturday night. I remember I was about to go to bed, but I was like, oh, I've been wanting to start this project for a couple of weeks now. And I'm like, I just want to get the account set up and running. So I feel like I made some progress, right? Anyways, I got hooked as soon as I started, and I was like, okay, it's 3 hours later. And both me and my wife are just staring at the screen like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe I'm building this, right? You can see all the code running on the side and doing everything with every little change that you make. And again, it's not perfect, okay? There are things that, just like ChatGPT, when you're talking to an LLM, you need to go back and forth a little bit with it, right? You need to shape the answers to what you want. You can't expect the first round, the second round to just be all perfect right off the bat. So now when I think about the cost to actually build the app that I just made, okay, let's say that it was not going to be $100,000. I didn't need VC funding to be able to do that. And maybe it would have cost me a couple $1,000, $10,000 on Upwork, right? To get somebody to be able to work on this idea. With Replit, for $29 a month, I was able to get started and build this version. Now, I did, with the extra usage, it charges you per request and whatnot. And it ended up being like an extra $10 or $15, okay, bucks for me to build this app. 3-4 hours is what I spent on the first day, the Saturday night that I built it. Then for 2 weeks, me and my wife just used it, right? So we didn't really make any edits to it. I just observed certain bugs and things that I hadn't noticed the first time along. And about days later, I basically decided to fix those bugs. I decided to add a couple more features, things that I had been wanting to do but didn't get to do the first time around. Now, this round did take me about 6-7 hours. Like, I spent a whole 7-8 hour workday on implementing these changes, adding new things, and getting it to be what I really wanted it. So somebody like myself, who has very minimal coding experience, was able to build something for myself that me and my wife use daily, multiple times a day, in like less than 15 hours total, and for less than $45. So I share that to say how low the cost of building has become and is going to continue to become, right? Now, I'm somebody with minimal coding experience, but let's say you had a software engineer who is using this tool themselves. Guess what? This is going to allow them to work way faster because they have more advanced knowledge than I do. So they're going to be able to use it in ways that are way more efficient for their workflows. This now leaves us with the question of, what do we actually care about? Because this is very similar to when the internet first came out and Google became really big, and in the culture, everybody just started using it, and it just became a way of working, a way of living. It's like you Google things for everything. We thought that, hey, the whole world now has access to the entire history of information at their fingertips. And the assumption was, hey, just because that is now available, a lot of problems can be solved, right? I should be really fit. I should be really wealthy. I should be really happy because guess what? I have all of this information in front of me for free, right? Before the barrier was like, oh, education. Not everybody has access to education. Now, education has no barriers or bounds, right? It is right in front of you. But what did we see? People did not really take advantage of it to the degree that we thought, right? People use Google, but they use it for things like the weather, right? Finding recipes, solving the smaller problems in their life, in their day-to-day, that still is a big deal when we span out and look at the past 25 or 50 years. It's a big deal. But Google is only as good as the input or the search that you give it, right? So if you're not asking it smart, good questions that are relevant to your life and advancing it, you're not going to get access to all of the supposed information that is available at your fingertips. So similarly, I feel like what this is going to do for us is make us have to sit there and go, whoa. Most of us have never been given the space to take a breath and go, okay, what do I care about? What do I want to work on? What do I want to contribute to? Because traditionally, we picked one thing and, okay, hopefully this career, this sector, we're going to be here for 30 years, 40 years. Okay, then that turned into, okay, you don't stay at one place for 30 years anymore. Every 3 to 5 years, maybe, you're switching careers, you're switching jobs, you're advancing things that you are doing. So that became pretty normal, right? The security that we once had of not just the 30 years, but hey, this will help make those 3-year bursts in your career, in every job that you go to for the next 30 years for you, also go very smoothly. That promise, sure, it might still be true to some extent, but what are we beginning to see? We're seeing that the security level that was promised before, right? Where the conveniences of not having to worry about taking the risk, right? Not having to worry about taking the overhead, investing your own resources, handling 10 different roles, and doing the things that you normally would have to do when you are running your own business anyways. We are beginning to see those same demands be applied at everyday jobs, right? So in your career now, because of the presence of AI, what you're probably going to be noticing is, oh, there's more expected of you, right? You're going to need to learn more and do more because there's now tools available at our fingertips to be able to do that, right? It's just like when the dishwasher came out, right? It's okay, you're not just expected to wash a couple plates per hour. Now you should be able to load this dishwasher with a lot and be able to wash maybe 10, 20, 30 dishes if you want, right? And so that same thinking is being applied in corporations and enterprises, right? Where it's like, oh, we either need less people to run what we're doing and be efficient, or we need people who can embrace these tools, use them, and actually do the work of 10, 20 people as the person who is just one person, right? So now that expectation of managing 10 different roles, doing 10 different things, learning new things on the job, facing risk and uncertainty, those same things are now very real and present in most jobs, right? Which is why this begs the question, what do we care about? And I think that is the hardest question to answer. We have not had a chance to maybe sit down and go, like, why would I think about curing cancer if I don't have the knowledge? I'm not a doctor. I haven't been to med school. I haven't done the 10 years of schooling to learn about cancer, right? Why my brain would not even go to that as a cause that I might want to solve, because it's like the limit is informational. There's so many limits, right? But I think, hear me out, the cost to build, because it is so low, right? And because the access to information and networks is so high now, right? Beyond Google, okay? We can learn things with ChatGPT about cancer that would take you Googling 20 different pages and reading 10 different articles and making connections from all these articles to maybe, get a basic understanding of, okay, what is this cancer? How does it work? And, a very elementary level of understanding, right? Coming back to that, learning coding for the sake of coding, right? You would have to go through that phase first. Hence why people go back to school for 4 years or 2 years is to be able to learn that thing for the sake of that thing, right? Only then were you able to go, okay, now how do I apply this to the real world? How do I apply all this biology and chemistry and physics and all this stuff into the world of cancer, this problem of cancer, right? So my theory and my belief is that we are able to now care about causes that were previously unthinkable for us, right? Because it's just something that maybe we can donate, maybe we can wear a ribbon, raise awareness, right? But there weren't things that we could actually do that felt like I'm contributing in a very meaningful way, right? Especially when, okay, you're doing things like, all right, I'm washing dishes, I'm doing low value work per se, right? When a robot or a piece of software could do this thing, I'm still here doing it. And that we are finding, right? Some people, it offers them a great living and they feel great about it. But for most people, it whittles away at their ego, right? You're like, man, I think I could be doing more with my life. I think I could be contributing more. I have problems that I care about that I would love to contribute to, right? That opportunity was only available to the privileged, only available to the wealthy in the past, right? If you had time to think about or care about those things, you had the money to be able to even play the game or consider playing the game, right? Now, I know I used an extreme example there with curing cancer or whatever, right? But it goes to show that it's forcing us to think bigger. It's forcing us to go, oh, instead of maybe an app that I want to build like a stopwatch for this thing that I have a daily annoyance that you need to use this thing and I want to track my laps, forces me to go, okay, what else? How else could I apply these new tools that I have access to? How else could I learn about other causes that are really important to me? For example, cybersecurity is something I've always been interested in. It's a hobby of mine. I love working with clients who are in that sector because I learn a lot from them. But it's not something where I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a whole course on cybersecurity and become a cybersecurity professional now. But what this allows us to do is labels and identities are going to be withering away, right? Because the roles that we have known in the past are going to be changing and disappearing, right? We know there's account teams and project managers and CEOs and CROs and CTOs and all sorts of identities and labels that make us feel really good about ourselves and feel like we have some purpose and meaning in what we're doing. And when you take that away, we're going to have this massive identity crisis where we go, oh my gosh, who am I? What do I care about? What do I want to contribute to? So the exercise that I have for you and that I've been doing for me as well, and will continue to, is to list down as many causes that you care about, that you want to contribute to, you want to be a part of, you want to learn about as possible. The way I said cybersecurity, coding, cancer, there's going to be many more things that I'm going to think of, like access to water, right? Things that are problems that I could just not think about solving before or even contributing to in 0.5% of a manner now become something where I'm like, wait, maybe I can, right? I find that because the cost is so low to build and it will continue to get very cheap to build, the same way that it was very expensive to have a TV in your house or a laptop or a desktop in your house when it first came out, or to have high-speed internet, right? Or to have a cell phone. And then over time, as technology becomes more and more accessible, it becomes cheaper, right? And it becomes more accessible to everyday people instead of just the privileged and the wealthy and the select top 1%. So I want to clarify that coming up with these list of causes is not just for the sake of I'm locked in to now curing cancer because I've thought about this being a cause I want to contribute to. The way that you want to do this is, okay, I've listed 10 to 20 different things that I really care about that actually move me beyond the bullshit job that I'm doing and the fake problems that it's solving, right? Oh, this medical device that does this thing, I'm contributing in this small way by working on a piece of code that helps do this other thing. The contributions that we will be able to bring forward, whether it is through our own businesses or through other people's businesses and contributing as an employee somewhere, is going to become more meaningful, right? And that is only if you choose to do that. Because if you don't take the time to actually think about what you care about, you're going to resort to the default. What's available? What's the next hot thing, right? What is going to not be affected by AI? And the truth is that there is nothing left like that. There won't be. You can't be chasing what's the next hot thing that I should hop on, because that way of thinking is what has been killed, right? It's what we, I think, as a world are beginning to grieve, right? It's like you can't just pick this one sector or industry or job and be like, oh, this is the next thing that will be safe. Let me hop on for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And the way that we know this is because all the CEOs of major companies, what are they saying when they're asked, hey, what should we tell our kids to learn? What should people be studying in colleges and schools now? Their answer is not any singular subject the way that it used to be, right? It is coming back to learning the meta skills of learn how to go deep on one thing. Because if you can do that, skill transfers across to many other things. And that is the one certainty that we have, okay? Amongst all of this uncertainty is that we will need to learn more and we will need to learn faster. And if you can do that using the tools that are now available to you, you're not just limited by the IQ that you started with. You now have access to tools to help you do these things better. Same way, we have calculators to help us do math. We don't need to do mental math all the time. If you're a cashier at a grocery store, that would be hard, right? That would limit the field of how many people could work maybe that role. Because there's a calculator, okay, now I know I can speed up these inputs, right? We can save time. So I'm finding that in a world where it is very cheap to get access to tools to build things that we care about, it does not make sense any longer to do things that you don't care about and to do things that you completely hate. Of course, there is a level of having to do that. It's life, right? But I'm talking about bigger level decisions, right? And beginning to trend towards the direction of contributing to some of these problems that you care about. Because I know you're going to be like, oh, okay, why even write that I want to solve world hunger and cure cancer and do all these crazy things? Like, why do that, right? Because I don't know. I don't see myself as somebody who's going to be able to do that, whether it's through my business or through someone else's. I don't know. The point of doing this is not to immediately do that and see those results in the next week or month or next year, right? It is to know that just like you have your values, right? Okay, these are the 10 things that I really care about. As this becomes way easier to access and build the way it has over the last several years, and it's getting crazy better and better, you're not going to be faced with the dilemma and the identity crisis that most people are, where you're like, oh no, what do I care about now? And now I'm panicking because I've lost my job and I don't know what I care about and I need to figure all of this out under pressure. So if you can do that up front, you now give yourself, like you have your subconscious working on these problems in the background. You now will be able to notice when there's a new tool that comes out, just like a Replit. I was able to notice, whoa, Replit's out. I can use it to help make the stopwatch thing that I wanted to make, right? That would not be on my mind if I hadn't thought about, okay, what are the actual projects that I want to complete with this skill of coding? Because for years I was just like, oh, I want to learn how to code, but I didn't care about what it would do until I was like, oh, this tangible project, I want to see it to the finish line and I can see it. It's a couple hours away, right? That momentum and dopamine and that motivation is what's going to carry a lot of people forward, right? It's going to be an exciting time if you choose to do the hard work of looking inward and figuring out what it is you truly care about. And the reason that I say this is the hardest job we're going to have in our entire life is because you can't fake this. You can't copy someone else's cause and something that they care about and go, yes, I care about this too, right? That's the tough part, is that we've been able to get by living in a world where we can copy other people's paths and model after theirs and go, oh, okay, this earns a lot of money to be a doctor. I'm also going to be a doctor, right? It's going to become harder and harder to copy someone else's path word for word. It's going to become harder and harder to copy someone else's path and find the same fulfillment that you think that you're going to get from doing that. Because what we're seeing, the world is rewarding, from the algorithms to employers to consumers, is that, do you really care about this? Or is this a money grab? Because in the 1900s, if you wanted to go into manufacturing because it was really profitable and you could fake yourself into being passionate about it, you could do that. Nobody would question it. Nobody would go, oh, you're not passionate about this, I'm not going to buy from you, right? But in today's day and age, and in the coming years and decades, there is going to be this sixth sense that we all have, right? Because we're all developing this sixth sense for, is this real? Is this not? Is this AI? Is this not? We're going to develop this sixth sense to see if something is genuine. Does this person genuinely care about this? And do I want to be a part of that? Because if they don't actually care about it, guess what? There's going to be dozens of other people who actually do. And they're going to have the upper hand and the upper advantage in being able to build those businesses, land those customers, land those jobs. It's the same way that two comedians who take 10 years to really develop their craft, they can't copy each other's jokes and the way they do things. They can learn certain parallels, right? Okay, when you do an opening joke, it makes the rest of your set go from C+ jokes to A+ jokes, right? When I bomb the first joke, okay, now the rest of everything that was an A+ might be a B-, right? You can now draw some of those parallels. Only you can actually look inward and go, what do I find funny? What do I care about? What is me? Because the audience sniffs it out, right? It's something they can pick out like sharks immediately. They can smell blood if you are not real about this. And so I hope this got you thinking in terms of it being an exciting time for us, right? In something that could be considered very scary, something that could be causing a lot of people to lose sleep at night, right? I hope this helps expand your view of what's possible. And I hope you take on the challenge of figuring out what you actually care about and what things you want to contribute to. Because the piece of advice that you hear from the tech world, right? It's build a product that you use. Don't build something that is just for other people. It's make something that you use. That's the sign that you've built something that is worthwhile, right? You have good taste. You trust your taste, so you can see if something passes your litmus test or not. And so that is why this is so critical, because if you've got 10, 20 ideas that are in your subconscious, even if they're big categories, like I said, with cancer, with access to water, or whatever it is, your brain is going to begin to look for solutions and look for ways to use these new tools that are coming up to be able to contribute, right? To be able to create things for yourself. The same way that I did with the stopwatch. I actually don't care if a single person uses it beyond me and my wife, right? Because we are using it, we love it, it's very useful to me. And traditionally, if something is useful to me or it resonates with me the same way it does with an artist, right? The artist makes this for them. The comedian doesn't go on stage and go, hey guys, what do you think is funny? I'll do that joke, right? They come with what they think is funny. And then the audience falls in love with the fact that, oh, you actually, like, you're controlling this ride. You're taking the lead here. If you ask for approval, you ask for what is funny, like the audience will turn on you, right? So let this be a quick 10-minute exercise to start. Jot down and brain dump all the things that you would create, you would care about if you had the means to do, if there was no limit on the technology you had access to, right? The labor, the capital, the software you had access to. If that was not an issue, what would you do? And you will see when you sit down with a blank piece of paper, the weight of that question, because you have not taken the time to actually think about that in many years. Most of us, since we were in school, like we made that decision once. Okay, maybe you switch things up 10, 20 years later once again, but it's not usually a sharp turn. It's only a couple degrees that sometimes people do. And so if you are somebody like me who is interested in multiple things, you have a lot of things that you want to do, you're interested in solving lots of problems, this is an exciting time, right? Because all that it takes now is for us to sit down and go, okay, let's get clear on what it is we care about so that we don't fall into the default of what everyone else is making us care about. And hopefully that will lead us to building things that we use, that we like. And of course, if we can do that, we can guarantee in this world of 8 billion people, hey, there might be another 20, another 100, another 1,000, another 10 people that might get use out of this. So I hope this was useful. I hope it was encouraging and made you connect some dots. Drop a comment. Let me know what you thought. I would love to hear from you, and make sure to sign up for my Habit Chest newsletter in the description below. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you on the next one.